Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all here and to welcome you to the secret preview of the Youth-Led Solutions documentary film. This has been a film, I guess, in the making for the last 18 months that has documented some of the fantastic solutions that young people have been developing around the world to climate change. And those solutions have impacted 38,000 young people around the world in those communities. And so, right. And so this evening we're going to start by showing you the film. It lasts about half an hour. And then we're going to have a panel. We've got some of the young leaders who are, some of our youth ambassadors who have made the film are here with us tonight. They're going to get into a conversation with Mike Bromfield, who is our wonderful event planner, coordinator and filmmaker of the documentary, who's going to get into conversation with them. We're then going to take a short break. And then we have the wonderful Rhys Lewis, who's going to perform for us. Really looking forward to that. So thank you all very much. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the youth ambassadors who have created these films, because without them, there wouldn't be a story to tell. And to the funders who have funded those youth-led solutions as well. So without further ado, let's watch the film. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the applause for really these celebrating the incredible solutions, the incredible young voices, the nearly 100 people behind the scenes that have made those stories happen, that have really been a part of that story. And that was just 6 of them. There were 35. Imagine what we could do, like I said earlier, imagine what we could do with investment tenfold, with 20-fold of that. Because that's 12 months worth of work. And we filmed those in 5 weeks. And I just want to give a brief moment of personal thanks to one person in particular, to the producer, the editor, and the director of the films, who sat up on the balcony at the back there, Mr. Nick Davies. So what's going to happen now is we had some pretty inspiring moments in that. I remember the first time that I saw the piece, I sat there and sobbed. It's pretty powerful when you hear Diana, who's in the room, Illy, Rebecca. We're so proud of the voices of the leadership that's been shown by almost entirely people under 30. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a bit of a conversation around what we've just seen. We're going to go a little bit more in depth, and that there will be some opportunity for audience questions as well. And obviously we are incredibly honoured to be joined by Rhys Lewis tonight as well. So to have that conversation, I'd like to welcome one of the last voices that we heard in the film, Rebecca Nkunde from Ndolo, Zambia. I'd also like to welcome one of the people that was there at the very inception of the Youth-Led Solutions Initiative, Magda. And because we are incredibly gracious that Rhys has joined us tonight, I think that there's some really unique perspective to bring to the conversation from an outside voice. So, Rhys Lewis, everybody. Cool. I'm actually Magda. I'm gonna start with you if you don't mind. If you could just start by introducing yourself, and I just want to kick off with some gut reactions. But if you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Magda from the Philippines, and I am I'm a staff at the YMCA, and I'm basically doing a lot of youth work, and now into different works in the operations. But I'd like to, because I want to share also how I felt. This is the first time that I've seen the film, and it really moved me to tears. I was seated back there, and I feel goosebumps, and wow, this is how far has the youth-led solutions have gone. And I am really grateful to all the people who has made these things possible, and I'd like to honor them. Chuck here and Tom, where are they? Please give them a round of applause. And they yes, it is youth led, but we cannot do it without our mentors. They are our mentors, and mentorship is really important in these youth led solutions.
Thanks, Magda. So just to provide a little bit of background context, YMCA launched the Youth-Led Solutions Initiative last October with the Youth-Led Solutions Summit, as you saw at the top of the film, which really was a call to action. We had around 700 young leaders from about 70 countries that tuned in. It was a virtual event, obviously. It was originally meant to be held in San Francisco, and Chuck, at the time, was the CEO and president of YMCA San Francisco. The journey started back in February 2019, just before the pandemic, when young leaders from all over the world convened in San Francisco at the most beautiful location of YMCA Point Bonita. And really, it was a co-design process, right? It was about actually, what does youth-led solutions mean? We had an idea, but really having an idea is one thing, but actually how do you execute that is another. So Magda was part of that process. And we are here now, nearly 2 years on from where that process started, and we can see the fruits of the labor of people like Magda, of everybody we saw in the film. Rebecca, I want to come to you. Firstly, if you could introduce yourself, but then also, could you just check that quote, "The onus is on us," is the one that hits here for me. So much so we used it twice in the film, you probably noticed. Could you introduce yourself and then just share, why is the onus on us?
Okay, so I'll do it all over again. I'm Rebecca Nkunde Chonya, a Zambian by nationality and by birth in every possible way. Mike keeps on referring to this thing, and this is not the first time he's talking about it. Truly, the onus is on us, because if you define climate change, in my simple terms, I would say it's the change in the Earth's atmospheric conditions due to human behavior. That's the last word I'll say. Due to what? You're going to be my class. Don't make me talk alone. Due to human behavior. So I do not think horses, no cattle, no chickens should run to our rescue. Sorry to use those terms. But I believe, when I'm a mother as well, so what I do is I'll let my kids play, and then they'll mess up the house, and at the end of the day, I'll tell them, very well, good job. So now you're going to clean up your mess. And they go about picking their toys, and upon them feeling the pinch of what it takes to clean up an environment, tomorrow, when I give them their box of toys, they will play with the thought in their mind that at the end of the day, that woman is going to make us clean this entire house. So as they throw away their toys, they will be very graceful in how they play with their toys. It's the same thing with us. I don't know, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I don't know how many of you have read the Bible, whether in the context of you being a Christian or not, or just as a book. There's a part where it says, God gave human beings the dominion over everything he made. Yeah? He gave us the dominion to rule over everything he made. And I believe privileges come with responsibilities. We just don't have the dominion. We have the responsibility to care for everything that he made and put in our care. I believe it's The onus is on us, and I'll continue believing that if you messed up the house with Legos, it's your job to pick up the Legos and put them back where they belong. So the earth is simply a house, and we are the people who live in this house. And we have messed it up in various ways. We have done all sorts of things to please ourselves. And it's a mess. So let's fix it. Let's pick up our Legos and put them properly. Yeah? Anybody with me?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the last couple of days, we had the pleasure of hosting Kumi Nadu, the former Secretary General of Amnesty International and Greenpeace, and he said something that just resonated so much with me, almost to the point of tears. We talked a lot about crying over the last week. I don't know if anyone else has felt the same, but he said, the Earth, our planet, the forests, the oceans, our food, it's going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely fine. Because when we're gone, when humanity is extinct, they'll replenish. Chernobyl is a fantastic example of a place that wildlife and the natural habitat is thriving as a result of humanity leaving. Destruction, humanity leaves, and it's become this absolute haven for the planet. We're not trying to save the planet. We're on a suicidal mission. We are trying to save ourselves. So I want to think about that for a second, and Reese, and bring you in on this, because we share something in common in that we both read the brilliant book and almost earth-shattering, and it's where my story sort of starts when it comes to my climate journey. David Wallace Wells' book, The Uninhabitable Earth. And if you haven't read it, I implore you to. Reese, please, could you just share with us a bit about the process of reading that and what that led to for you?
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I'm in awe of that and you guys and everything that's going on in this room. So thank you for having me. Yeah, that book was a sort of, again, kind of an entry into the kind of the bigger issues that we're facing in a. Yeah, I think I hadn't really done as much reading as I should have perhaps at that point. So that was one of those books I thought I really want to get to know this in a deeper way. And it was just fascinating and terrifying, and it made me feel like I needed to change a lot of the ways I was personally living. And I thought the biggest thing to come out of that book for me was how how the issu's communicated, because I think so many people will be afraid of it when they read it, so they turn off. And so many people feel guilt. I felt guilt. You know, you have to stand up to your own behavior and go, yeah, I'm part of the problem. And a lot of people, including myself, would kind of want to brush that under the carpet and not think too much about it. And I think the more I've approached it, the more you have to take responsibility and say, how can I make a difference or do something, make a sacrifice, make a change? But I think the hardest thing at the minute, and I don't know if this conference as a wider sort of issue is talking about how we get everyone to take that responsibility and not feel like they're being vilified for doing something that's damaging to the climate, and turn that into something positive where a change in their life can actually be something that doesn't feel like they're being blamed, but something that they can do to change in a positive. I don't know if that makes sense, but I certainly feel like so many of my parents and my friends, they sort of turn off to it because they're afraid and they feel guilty. And I think that book really interestingly brought that to the forefront of why people aren't seeing this as an emergency, because they're just turning it off. And I think the biggest thing to hopefully change from these kind of conversations with politicians is that everyone's talking about it, everyone knows what's going on, and hopefully people don't feel, everyone's in it together to make a difference. And this is an amazing achievement, and what people can do in a year is so inspiring. And I think the more that people get involved locally in their communities to do something similar, the more things can change.
I completely agree that you know, sometimes I think when we talk about the earth-shattering reality that lays ahead for the next 10, 20, 30 years, and the tiny window of opportunity that we have to turn this around, that really scares people. And those that aren't, those people that aren't in the room, those people that aren't at COP, that pushes them away, if anything, you know. And actually, you know, Magda, I was there with you in San Francisco back in 2019, at the start of last year. At no point in that week that we spent co-creating the Youth-Led Solutions Initiative did I ever feel a sense of fear or anxiety. I felt this was about celebration and investment and really empowering. How do we communicate the climate crisis and the urgency in that positive way that doesn't alienate people?
I remember when we were crafting the objectives of the youth-led solutions, we had so many things that we want to achieve. We were dreaming big, and that's how we're supposed to be. We have to dream big for change, for combating climate change. And when we started it, we boiled down to three. And I want to congratulate our team and the YMCA in general for achieving, I believe that we have achieved the three that we set. The first one was to empower young people and equip them to make them empower other young people to do climate action. And I think we did that in the film. You saw how these teams were created. And the second objective that we wanted to achieve was to at least 50 of the delegates would go out and start a solution in their communities. And I believe with the 35 solution teams that we have, these are not just 35 young people, and these are more than 35 young people. And the third that we wanted to achieve that time is to escalate international dialogue about climate action. And I believe that we've done that. We became as inclusive as possible, and I think that's what we need. We need to be inclusive. We need to be supporting these ideas and make more of this, escalate these kinds of solutions, these kinds of programs, and that I think is a concrete projects that climate finance should go into.
I completely agree, and you know, we're only able to do that when we're able to celebrate the success, right? Because now I feel like we've got the ability to tell a story that goes, look what these people have achieved, and I know that some of them are in the room as well. In the lead up to COP26, there's been a conversation that YMCA has been having for the better part of a year about what do we do in the run-up to COP26. And a few weeks ago, we were talking to Universal Music Group about, you know, bringing an artist to COP26. And then when Reese got the call to say, hey, would you come and would you support and play and be part of this? You jumped. It felt to me like a jumping at the opportunity. Reese, the music industry, people with profile, people with following, obviously feel have some sort of responsibility. What importance does that lend to the conversation?
Well, I suppose in the same sense that every industry has a responsibility to change. And I think certainly obviously being locked down for the last year or so, the industry's been forced to change, and I think it should make a lot of people think more about, you know, people taking flights all the time, business meetings that don't necessarily have to happen. And obviously the biggest thing in music is touring. It's a huge, huge mouth to feed when it comes to the resources that go into it and the travel that goes into it. So just as a standalone thing, I think people flying around the world to create music, does it have to happen? Can you do it at home? Could you do it locally? Touring, is there a way of doing that more sustainably? Do we have to be playing shows all around the world all the time? Is there a way of evolving and creating something for their fans that aren't as close but can still feel connected? And I think we have done that in the last year or so. People have shown that you can do a show from anywhere and fans can feel like they're supporting you. And I think for the sake of the future, we have to start thinking about those kind of sacrifices for the industry as a sort of general, how does the industry function? And then obviously, as you say, like artists with a wider influence or a lot of followers, I think can be doing more to talk about it. And I think there's a culture where we haven't necessarily seen much in terms of politics or social matters at the heart of songs for a long time. I know a few artists do it and certain genres do it, but I'd love to see someone like Ed Sheeran talking about it more and writing songs about it. And even if he's not writing songs about it, I think your song was beautiful. It was incredible. And it just shows the power of music to spark a thought, create that empathy. And I think that's what artists should be doing more of, is making art that can move people to feel that way. And the biggest conversation that people can have right now is about climate change, in my opinion. So I feel like the people that have the biggest followings in the world should be doing more to discuss it. So those are a few ways I think the music industry certainly has a part to play in it.
And we thank you for being one of
Pleasure.
those
Honestly,
artists,
absolute
Reeds,
pleasure.
as well. And actually, just as I love to signpost people to different pieces of art and things that they can, that resonate. Last Saturday, UMA Entertainment hosted a gig here in Glasgow for COP26, and Aurora and Nick Mulvey and Sam Fisher all performed and took part in a panel conversation. And Aurora, who is the most incredible Norwegian artist, has a song called The Seed, which is based on a Greek proverb, which loosely translated is, when the last tree has fallen, when the last fish is caught, you cannot eat money. And she's written a song using that proverb as, when we saw that performed live, I know that Shaquille from San Francisco, who's one of our YMCA ambassadors, he and I were stood there side by side, almost in tears, hearing that live. So please, artists that are lending their voice to it, support them as well, because I think, it's a bit like that argument of, when you choose where you put your money, right? For those of us that have the privilege to be able to make those decisions about what clothes that we buy and where we buy our coffee and what restaurants we eat at and what type of food and everything that sits behind that, where your pension is, if you are fortunate enough to have one, if you invest sustainably and ethically, that will go a long way. And in many ways, if we can lend more support to the artists as well, because they are trying to use their voice and their platforms for good things, then I think that goes a long way. Rebecca, I wanted to circle back to the actual process of filming, because we shot all of that, the whole process beginning to end was almost 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I mean, the edit was finished last Tuesday. How was that in terms of the creative process and telling that story? A lot of people were involved behind the scenes. What was it like to actually think, wow, I'm now trying to communicate the story of what we are doing on the ground with schools, with students in Ndola?
For the first time, I felt like I was given an opportunity to have my voice heard. And not just my voice, but the voices of the people that I work with to be heard on a larger scale. So it was very intense, and a lot of work went into it. I cannot take away anything from it. It's just been an amazing process and a humbling process also at the same time, because a lot of the people that I work with and the young people that are in the video, majority of them are not even in the video. When we just started everything, it was like they didn't have any idea what this thing was about. And then it suddenly just became a reality before their faces. And when we told them, your voices are going to be heard, people are going to know about the efforts that you're making in mitigating climate change out there, the expression on their faces was just breathtaking. And also just, I could see that change is taking place. So it was so satisfying, and it's even more so satisfying right now that I'm in a room with people who are attentively listening to me, who shouldn't have...
As a teacher, you must be used to that.
I'm quite used to it, but my students look a little bit older today. So I know they have so many important things to do, but they're here. That makes it special, and that makes me feel like I'm making a mark. Like Beyonce said, I was here. Even when I'm gone generations from now, I will be so glad in my rotting bones to say I was there and I helped make the change.
I have a question of all of you, still on the theme of communicating and stories, because I was challenged the other day with a question along the lines of, do your parents understand your values and your what you're passionate about? Because actually, for us to be better communicators about our passion for climate activism, you know, in many ways that's where it starts, because that can be the most challenging thing to be able to get across. And I know that there are some people in this room who are parents whose views and perceptions have been changed as a result of their children saying to them, you know, hey, will you go vegan? This is what I'm passionate about. So just honestly, do your parents understand values, what you're passionate about? Because mine certainly don't. So feel no guilt. Feel no guilt here.
Oh no, I was going to say I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think some things feel very generationally different, and they're trying to catch up, and other things it feels like they're really aware of and on board with. And I think my parents I think that what's amazing about youth work is that those children are going to be inspiring their parents and other people in that community, and young people are at the forefront of a lot of that change often, and inspiring. I remember when it's like when you pick up a new sport and suddenly your parents are, well, my dad was really into it and they had never watched it before, and it's the same thing for when you get into a subject or you're passionate about climate change. If your kids are saying, this is really important to me, I want to be a part of it, I think that's a huge thing. And my mum's gone vegetarian because I'm a vegetarian, and that's things like that. I think it's cool that she's kind of gone, yeah, I want to know. And there are little things like that where she'll kind of say, oh yeah, no, we went to the greengrocers and we got that, we said about that greengrocer you went to, and we got our veg from there last week. And it's like stuff like that they kind of hear what I'm saying and they kind of pick up on it. And I think that's nice that they want to feel like they're doing the right thing. But I think maybe generationally it's very hard sometimes to catch up or know what or how to act sometimes. But I feel like that sometimes anyway.
Well, you're lucky your mother went vegetarian. Mine would never do that. No ways. But I'm very lucky and blessed because both my mom and dad are very supportive of my work. And the song that I just did was 90% done by my dad. So I really appreciate him. So I pitched the idea to him, and then he structured everything and then brought me to the table, and we finished it all up together, as well as my husband. I am so blessed because every time that I talk to them about things related to climate change, they actually listen. They listen, and then they just can't do it. So they'll be like, okay, you go ahead and do it. I think that's a good idea, so you go ahead and do it. Yeah, I feel supported by them, and so lucky because very few parents are doing that nowadays. And way back when I was just a teenager, I think they didn't understand me. They didn't really support, because I've been an artist, like even just in other ways, for some time now. So there will be times as a kid when I would draw pictures on the wall, and I would get a very wonderful whooping for doing that. And at the end of the day, like I told you, she would make me clean the wall. She told me, clean this wall up or else, and I would do it. But eventually they realized that I was actually talented. It was a talent that was growing from there. It was difficult to see, but eventually they saw it, and they're seeing the fruits of those things now. And from that, I learned to say, there are very many ways that a child can express to you that they're into something. It's up to you to listen and to understand. It's up to you to find a way of leveling the playing field between you and your son or your daughter, to actually listen to them and understand what they're trying to communicate. They might not do it in the best possible ways, but they do it in their own way, using tantrums and all of that. But it works. It does work. Mothers, you're the best.
Okay. Speaking about parents, I'm an orphan, and I lost my parents when I was a young girl, both of them. And but I remember when I was a kid, my dad would thought that I'm a weird person because I hug trees literally in front of our house. We used to have the tree house. We were climbing, and but because of there was a massive flooding that happened in our place back home, and everything was destroyed. And I remember I remember there are so many things that that happened into my life, injustices, and there was 2 weeks before my father passed away. I stood up and I fought a person in authority. And the last thing that I heard that my father told me is that you did the right thing, anak. Anak means child. And now I consider myself as a daughter of the Mother Earth and a daughter of God, the Father. And that's what I'm, that's what keeps me going in this battle. So because you brought up about the parents, and I would like to say that I believe they are supporting me and they know what I'm doing because they're up there and watching me, and they would know if I throw a trash there, and I would feel like, hey, what are you doing? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to be honest about something, and I hope I don't get in trouble for doing this. We're not live streaming this, we're only recording it, so this is just us in the room, right? YMCA on Friday will announce that we're committing another $150,000 to youth-led solutions for climate action specifically. So that's on top of the 250. And we have this ambition that by the end of next year, that we can take that to 1 million, which is actually, in the grand scheme of Bezos standing on stage going, here's 2 billion, cop, it's not a lot of money, right? In the grand scheme of things, personal wealth aside, but if we're talking in the terms of cop, sort of announcements, that's quite a modest amount. The challenge that we face to raise something as modest as $1 million for youth-led solutions, I cannot even begin to tell you. Trying to work with corporations to seek sponsorship and to actually get them to invest in work like the films that you've just seen and the projects on the ground is one of the most challenging things. And serious props to some of the sponsors of this event and to Extreme Hangout and Extreme International, who actually have funded this entire side fringe event at COP, just so events like this have a voice, because otherwise we wouldn't. It's a big question. How do we get through that? How do you try and get through to what is quite often a faceless entity? What is our route into that, to be able to go, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what we have achieved, now write the check?
That's that's can I answer first? Okay, we've been hearing a lot here in COP about climate finance, and I really believe that organizations like the YMCA should show these people this is how to do it, because back in my country, I don't hear a lot of things about government supporting youth-led solutions or funding programs like this. And I'm proud that I am part of the YMCA and that the YMCA is doing something. And I believe that there are other organizations as well that's doing these kinds of projects. And it's important that we escalate these matters in our government, in our society. We have to keep on talking about this. We have to share our stories. We have to share to them that we could do things in a different approach, because sometimes rules of engagement, bureaucracy, red tape. These things really, slow the process, hinder. Like the next thing you know it, it's gone before, it's too late. And what we are doing is we are in a space, and what we did in the youth-led solutions, originally we planned to do it face to face in San Francisco, but I guess the other side that the pandemic has brought about is it became wider. The reach is wider, and the space in the virtual has reached to more young people and more people hearing about this. So I believe that we should advocate for this, especially that in this COP, climate finance is a big thing, and we need to push for that in our own communities, in our own government. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any reflections before I throw to the floor for a... We've got time for a couple of questions. Down on the front row here.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank all the speakers today. It was a wonderful presentation that we saw today. One of the things, are your own organisations actually going to get to see the video, and see that round? You spoke about, how do we unlock businesses to give us money? I would probably just send them and ask them to look at it. And the fact that, it demonstrated to me, how each organisation, how each local group of YMCA members can actually make such a difference in the local community, but how together that can make such a difference worldwide. And it really was inspiring to see that, and I'd just like to thank you all for coming along, some further than others, but it's been good to hear what you've had to say today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take that more as a reflection than a question. So any other questions or reflections? It's fine too. We've probably got time for one more. So hands up now, or you might miss it. There we go. First one I saw.
I just want to ask, could we maybe try getting more YMCAs involved? I know we don't do anything at the moment, and I was thinking, watching that, what could we do? Would that be possible? Maybe trying to reach out to other ones that aren't doing anything?
So I'm going to take your question in the macro as to what can other NGOs do?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a great and obviously there are some that are climate focused specifically. I remember when Amnesty International, as a human rights charity, made that transition from human rights because they recognise the intersectionality of human rights and climate justice. What do we think that NGOs that aren't necessarily specifically climate action orientated can do to recognize it's all connected, right?
Okay, so we're all part of one big globe, which is a community, and if you are not able to do it, there's somebody who's doing it. The best thing to do is support them, partner with them. You cannot go to places I go, but you can help me get there. However, you can help me get there. We do not all work for NASA, do we? But somehow, NASA finds their way up there, and we benefit from the things they say or do. Some of them we don't agree with, but we actually are beneficiaries of the things that NASA has done. Okay, so YMCA will be NASA in this case, and a lot of other organizations will be.
By the way,
us.
We'll take that analogy quite happily. Sorry, carry on.
A whole lot of these organizations that are not climate change oriented will be us, who don't know nothing about space. So the smallest that we can do to help all these people go to space, the better. If you can join hands with me, if you can give me shoes to climb up, if you can give me anything that you will do to support anybody who's fighting or doing climate action, the better. Whatever help you will do to partner with them. If you're a journalist, if you're going to help put them on air, that's better. If you are a teacher, if you are going to spread the word also, like me, I talk a lot, that's better. if you are a banker, if there's anything that you can do in your faculty to help push this thing forward, do that. If you can sing like him, come on, bring on the songs. Okay. If you're a mathematician, come on, calculate something and help us do the work, and we will do it. Yes.
That's very in connection with that. I agree with you, and I think other organizations can also do youth-led solutions. I mean, YMCA is a very inclusive organization, and we do not. We may have started this, but this is the blueprint, and this can be replicated. And I think that's something that we need to do. We do not take credit for it for ourselves, but we're doing it for the sake of our environment. So not just in the climate issue, but also in other issues as well, and like in employment, in health, in education, in different realities that our organizations are wanted to address. And yeah, so if you have opportunities to support projects like this, like what the YMCA is doing, do it. But if you are also working in other grassroots level in other communities with different realities, support them. Encourage these kinds of projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Magda. Reese, any reflections on, and feel free to contextualize it in the music industry with the festival organizers, event organizers. How do we get more of the industries on board? Because it's whether it be NGOs and charities or whether it be the creative industry.
Well, I think it's more just having to make sure that their business model is actually sustainable and it's not damaging on other people. I think ultimately there always is that kind of profit word that a lot of these festivals are running on, and unless they can operate in a way that is climate friendly, should they be operating? And there's so many ways and solutions to doing it differently. It might cost more money in the short term, but long term it's kind of the sacrifice that a lot of these festivals and touring parties have to make. Otherwise, it just as an industry, it just looks bad. It's horrible, and we should be leading by example to show that these things can change, and not just in 10 years, but next year. Or what Glastonbury, being the biggest festival in the world, obviously has a massive green initiative behind it, but it could be definitely doing more to be more sustainable, less impactful on the climate, and show the world that big things like that, big events like that, can be done sustainably. And those kind of small things for those people when they're there are a big it's kind of trendsetter. And I think that's something that the industry that I'm in kind of does set trends, and musicians are leaders. And if they are suddenly saying this is how it has to be done, and it can be shown as a positive thing, other companies, other organizations are going to take notice and change as well. So I think there are so many forward-thinking artists in the world, and the fact that so many of them exist in music, I think we should be challenging the industry to be innovative and forward-thinking, to show other examples of how businesses can run, I suppose.
And just to add on to what he's saying, I think you will all agree with me that music cuts across different generations. Music has no race. Music has no ideology, or it cannot be identified with just a certain type of people. Music is like a universal language, and if we could use music to communicate things, then I guess we will impact every other generation, because this is like it counters all generations. It just doesn't pick on one generation and say, okay, we will just destroy the people who were born in the 90s. No, it's going to deal with all of us. All of us. Even if you're 90 or you're 9 minutes old, it will deal with you. So if we're going to spread the word or put a message across, let's use modes of communication that can reach everyone. And I think music is a powerful tool to just do that.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, Magda, Reese, for your reflections, for your insights. I think that's a wonderful note to end on, and a wonderful segue into the fact that Reese will be performing very shortly. Just before I put down the mic and we take a short break, I just want to say that obviously, the Youth-Led Solutions Initiative, the work that the teams have been doing around the world, is clearly something that all of us are passionate about here, clearly in the room. That's why you're here. But if there's one thing to take away from it, is that we need to bang the drum outside the room as well. And we have to build those bridges across to be able to meet people where they're at and bring them on the journey. Because we can't throw stones at glass houses, because it's only going to push people further away. And that, that idea of just shouting down the houses, for me, is not necessarily the way that we're going to get everybody to come on the journey. So you can find out more about all of this work at ymca.int/COP26 and at youthsolutions.ymca.int. Thank you so much. We're going to take a 10 to 15 minute break. Grab yourself a drink at the bar. We do need to just clear the floor for 5 minutes, so all head upstairs to the bar and grab yourself a drink. And then we'll really looking forward to hearing Reese perform. Please, once again, put your hands together for all of our panelists.